Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is October 24, 2023. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here today with John S. Gordon. Where are you calling in from, John?
Mystic, Connecticut.
How cool is that? The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
Love.
That's that is the answer I get the most, and I agree wholeheartedly. Thank
Okay.
you. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Well, it used to be books, and to a considerable extent still is. Although been doing a lot of listening to books on audio, audible books and things like that lately. But the written word as opposed to flashy pictures.
And did you become a reader, one, because your parents told you to read, two, they did it as an example or on your own?
Well, my father was an English professor, so there were a lot of books around. I tell you what it was not Dick and Jane. Uh, and what it was mainly was comic books. That's what I owe whatever literacy I have. I have to comic books because they were fun to read, and the kind of lessons and exercise they did in school were not.
Yeah, one of my favorite lyricists, one of the great American songwriters is Hank Williams, and they asked him, "What was your biggest influence for your lyric writing?" He said, "Comic books."
Absolutely, sure. Some,
Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
uh, well, because there's no such thing as bad knowledge. The more you know, the more you have available, the better off you are. The trick is, the saying goes, an expert is not someone who knows everything about something. An expert is someone who knows how to find out something about something. And, so I'm sitting here in my office and there's a lot of books around, especially this Joyce section, this Joyce wall over here, which is sort of comforting along with everything else.
Yeah.
But of course, the internet, by God, the internet has got a lot to answer for, but it's still a great resource.
Do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
Innate,
Yeah.
you know,
Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I
think again.
very good. Think again. I like that.
Mm.
Yeah, McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. And Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it.
Well, they're both right about that. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
how do I know my opinion about something until I've written it out? Right.
Yeah.
You have to decide. Well, you got to decide whether you're going to go left or go right. I mean, that kind of thing.
Do thoughts create emotions?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it's a chicken and egg, but absolutely.
Can humans think without language?
Yes. Oh, yes, sure. I mean, cats think.
Yeah. Chomsky says a language is not just words, it's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is.
Chomsky's
John,
right. He's right about that.
yeah, but John, what do you do when language breaks down? When language doesn't work, what do you do?
Well, in many cases, you stand up and scream. I mean, there's a lot of that around lately, as you must have noticed. I mean,
I
that
like,
again, that's chicken and egg. But
yeah,
I mean, the big question for the age we're in right now is: have we gotten stupider in the last 20 years, or
yeah,
is it just that the internet and everything else just brings it out? But it's
yeah,
pretty clear we haven't been getting smarter.
yeah. That's good. Have we gotten stupider? I could that a lot of these beginning questions are sort of these either or. I know it's
Mm.
both and it depends, but they're just prompts. Like this one's pretty stupid, but it's basically your observations of humans in general. Are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
We're getting more feeling. I mean, just a whole lot of not a whole lot of thinking going on,
Yeah.
and I don't know why. I mean, all kinds of possible reasons, but it just seems to be the case. Maybe I'm doing a myth of the golden age thing, but it just seems that things were more, you know, rational 50 years ago than they are now.
Yes. These are two questions from Turing in the 50s. Is thinking a function of the soul?
Define soul.
Yeah.
No, I think it's maybe what the soul is a kind of focal point for gathering and selecting the thoughts that are available. But uh, but it's more of a mediation than the origin.
Mediation. See, that's what I'm after, John. I appreciate that. It's me and you versus the wording on the question. So I like when people change the wording, adjust the question wording. Thank you.
Okay.
The second Turing question is, can machines think?
Well, that is the issue of the day right now. Uh, everybody's very worried about artificial intelligence. Um, when I hear when someone gives me an artificially intelligent joke that I laugh at, then I'll be concerned.
That's good. So you haven't gotten an AI joke yet that you laughed at.
No, not about AI, but something. Why did the farmer wear red suspenders? And he's because he was a farmer and he was wearing suspenders. I mean, I'm waiting to hear something funny
Right.
from that kind of
But
source.
just to clarify, you mean a joke written by
Yeah,
AI.
oh, written by AI. Yes.
Oh,
Uh,
written by AI or a joke about AI. You
no,
mean
about I'm sure there are funny jokes about
okay,
AI. There's always been funny jokes about computers and robots and so
yeah.
forth. But uh,
Yeah, you're waiting for a joke to be
bye.
written by AI. That's good. I like that. That's a great goal. I'll send you one when I hear one.
Okay.
Um, John, do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I don't think I don't think you can pursue happiness. I mean, I think it's a byproduct.
Yeah.
I mean, you can. I mean, obviously there are drugs that'll make you very happy, but there's, that's not the answer, as they say, because it wears off and then there's a reaction and so forth. So no, but W.H. Auden says somewhere that concentration is happiness. And I think that's as close as I've come to it. I mean, when you're doing something that you really want to do and things are going well and so forth, and that's what makes you happy.
Very good. Yeah, I got it from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. He says happiness doesn't tend to last, but meaning does tend to last.
Yeah, yeah. Like, back to square one, like love.
Yeah. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
Well, Joyce said imagination is memory.
Yeah.
And so I'm sort of dodging the question here, but there is a kind of interactive action going on between them.
Yes. Very good. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
I don't know. You have to ask Einstein about that, and I'm no Einstein.
But I mean, your hunch or your guess.
Well, thought is electricity, and electricity is well, nothing's faster than light, according to again our friend Einstein. So, I think less. I don't. Electricity has to go through circuits, it has to go through wires or whatever chemistry. So I'm guessing the speed of light is faster. Taking a very literal approach to that question of yours.
Yeah. Audre Lorde, the poet, said, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Her colleague Yvonne Rainer responded and said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Who's the master? I'm sorry, I'm
Very
sort of
good.
it's too metaphysical for me. But uh, no, the other question is why would you want to dismantle the master's house? If he's a
Yeah,
master, he's probably going to do something you don't want. And if you do, then there's always a wrecking ball. Whatever.
yeah. Well, it's interesting because that's just because I open some of these questions with cute quotes, it doesn't mean you have to answer. You apply those because
Mm,
it's basically what tool do you gravitate towards? but I do want to talk about what you asked, because the whole purpose of this series is to invent new questions. So to answer a question with a question is you win, John. That's it.
Okay,
And
that's good.
that's like the Irish, they say, hey, I hear you Irish people answer questions with questions. They go, we do, eh? So
Right,
in that
right.
regard, Frank Zappa said it well in one question. He said, who are the brain police? He wasn't saying the evil capitalist corporate are brain police, or the voice inside your head is the brain police. He's just asking the question. So, yeah, you asking who is the master, Audre Lorde being a poet, she was probably talking about white supremacy, but she could have been talking about metaphorically something else, being a poet.
Oh, she was talking about a bad master then.
Probably,
Oh, okay. I
but
was thinking,
we don't know.
I was thinking more in terms of maestro. I mean,
Yeah,
do you
but
want
we
to?
don't know. So, I mean, the basic question is, what tool do you gravitate towards?
Well, again, I'd want to know who the maestro was.
Yeah.
If it's Mozart, I'm not going to want to, do anything to him except find someone who can play him.
What new toy do you suggest?
Oh, that's a good question. A new toy. Hmm. Um, well, there's so many toys out there these days, and they're all computer generated. So I think maybe a super frisbee.
Super frisbee. I
A
love
super
that.
frisbee. So something not computer.
I like that. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Whether I'm going to sleep. I've had troubles on. So actually, it's not a big problem these days. But every
Yeah,
now and then I get insomnia. So that's my goal, is to go to sleep. Uh,
I'm with you with that. The McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and
not-
detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So, John, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
First of all, I have to say, Ezra Pound is a very good example of the antenna of the race. I mean, he really fucked up on an amazing scale, and he saw some things and didn't see some others. That's like Shelley saying that, we're the unacknowledged legislators. I'm, you know, I'm just that's what poets say about poets, because they think poets are great. I'm just not sure it's true. The
That
po-
is
po-
great.
poets
Yeah,
po- poets get things wrong all the time.
yeah, that's good. But let's just say your books as an artist and an author, I think, have probed some of the hidden psychic effects of Joyce, not the just surface things. Why do people ignore when people go a little deeper, on anything?
Well, because I mean, it's usually hindsight to find out who did that and who was crazy. There's an old movie called Bewitched, which is based on the Faust story, and the guy playing the devil comes up to a guy played by what's his name, Dudley Moore, and he says, "I'm Satan. I have the power to give you all kinds of powers." And Dudley Moore character says, "You're some kind of nutcase, is what you are." And the Satan character says, but they said the same thing about Edison. They said the thing about Einstein, and Dudley Moore answers, "Yeah, they said it about a lot of nutcases too." Uh,
Yeah, it's not Bewitched, it's some other title. It's one of my favorite movies, in fact. What is it? It's not Bewitched.
well, has Raquel? It was late '60s. Has
No,
Raquel?
no,
Well,
I know it. I know the
yeah,
film.
yeah, right, right,
Raquel
right.
Welch. It's
Okay, I
really
mean, okay, right.
yeah.
I don't know. I guess I got
I
the
think
name
it's
wrong.
called No, what is it? Anyway, Dazzle.
Bedazzle. That's it. You're right.
Dazzle. What
Bedazzle.
a
Right.
great film to bring
Uh,
up. Beautiful. But that's McLuhan's great line is, you can't prove you're sane unless you have discharge papers from a mental hospital.
One of the first jokes I ever learned as a kid was about the guy who lost his glasses and couldn't look for them until he'd found them. Mm, that's a human situation.
That's it. That's the drunk is looking for something under a street light, and the cop
Right,
goes, "What are you looking for?" And he goes, "Well, you know the joke. I want
right. A
to
streetlight effect. Right.
over here." Yeah.
Uh,
Very good, John. I'm glad you're here because I this the purpose again of this is to have fun.
mm.
And so do artists have moral obligation?
I hope not. I mean, I don't think there's anything about being an artist that makes you more moral than anyone else. It can happen, but it can go otherwise. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a big thorny question, and we can all, it'd be better if Lena Riefenstahl had gone into sewing or something other than what she did. But uh, 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 but that's the extreme example. Um,
That's great. Oh, yeah, what do they call it? Macrame or something. Leni Riefenstahl mac.
right, that's right. That world would be a better place if she'd done macrame.
Yeah,
But on the, you know, one of
yeah,
my favorite writers is Charles Dickens, and he, I think, wanted to make one of his goals was to make the world a better place, was to improve people's behavior by the influence of his writings, and good for him.
yeah.
I'm glad. I think it's considerable succeeded.
Yes. Very good. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
I don't think there are new ideas.
Yeah,
I just think we redistribute and repackage them.
yeah,
Nothing new under the sun. I'm a reactionary in that way.
yeah.
Somebody once ex- coined the expression neophilia for a kind of 20th, 21st century, you getting all hot and bothered with everything that's new.
Yeah. Yeah, that reminded me, I asked the great jazz bass player Charlie Hayden. He plays a Appalachian folk song in the middle of an Ornette Coleman song. And I says, "What's the name of that song?" He goes, "Old Joe Clark." I said, "Who wrote it?" And he goes, "Nobody wrote it." But
Yeah,
somebody wrote that, but it's passed down. So it's like
yeah,
whoever claims the publishing is the guy who gets the writing credit.
sure. I mean, well, somebody who understood that very well was James Joyce.
Exactly. Very good. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
My earliest memory is seeing the swan boats in Boston Common.
Yeah. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Well, more of the latter, but it sort of depends who you are. But no, I mean we can't. I mean, living without memory, that's the definition of Alzheimer's, and that's not a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah. Tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
Uh, my maternal grandfather, um, who was you know a good man. I mean, not perfect. He was a terrible driver, for instance. It's evidence for the existence of God that he never killed anybody with his car. But aside from that, he was 100% honest to a almost and sometimes a troubling degree, but still absolute integrity. Um, just and as at the same time he had fun. He had an enjoyable, gregarious, happy life, and while holding on to his rock solid principles. I'm named for him, by the way. His name was John Swan, and I'm John Swan Gordon.
Nice. Swan is an SWAN.
That's right.
What a beautiful middle name. I
Well,
go to Swans Island in Maine every year for a music.
so I somebody once told me that there's a connection with the family there, with the Swan family. I mean, my grandfather had a lot to do with Maine. I mean, it's a long story and but anyway, but I
Yeah,
think there's maybe a link there.
beautiful. And you want to hear the doozy? The guy who puts on the music festival on Swans Island lives in a house, and it was owned by James Joyce, but
No,
not
no,
our
no,
James
that's right, right.
Joyce. Well, not ours. I mean, not the James Joyce. Okay, so outside your immediate family, same question.
Oh, well, in Joyce studies, sort of my role model, if that's the word, would be Clive Hart.
Yeah,
I was also, had a kind of, I mean, I always liked Hugh Ketter's stuff very much. Outside of Joyce studies, well, I mean, a lot of literary critics I've liked, like Northrop Frye, and outside of literary critics and so forth, my first hero was probably Adlai Stevenson, going way back. And let's see, more recently, I was a big fan of Nat Hentoff, who died a couple of years ago, and I'm not sure who is around today. That may be a problem. I don't know who do I want to be like today.
yeah.
Have to think about that.
I love Nat Hentoff. Beautiful. He gave my
Yeah.
wife a great review once, and he
Oh,
he
oh,
appears
fabulous.
he appears in a Woody Allen film as Nate Hentoff, and I goes,
Does he? Does he really?
he appears in the one where Sean Penn is the Django Reinhardt guy, and he plays himself.
Uh, well, I have to look that up. I
Yeah.
didn't know that. I didn't know that. Okay.
Were you raised a particular religion?
Episcopalian.
Do you pray?
No, no. Religiously, I am a cluelessite. I haven't a clue about ultimate things. I mean, if the idea that there is a God seems to me insane, and so does the idea that there isn't.
If God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
I'm sorry.
I've had that answer. I love that answer. I'm sorry.
Not for me, actually. I've had an amazingly lucky life. I'm a
Right.
white American who grew up in the second half of the 20th century. It doesn't get any better than that.
Yep.
But he's got a lot to answer for, and other people.
You must have ESP, John. It leads perfectly into, do evil people exist, or does evil
Oh,
use people as a vehicle?
no, evil people exist. I've known, I think, three genuinely evil people in my life, which is, I mean, but most, they're not, again, a sheltered American life here, but they're not the big problem. Big problem is half-assedness.
Yeah, amazing. Really well put. So, really, the hidden question here, John, is how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola
Mhm,
stole from the mom of the samurais, keep your friends close and your
mhm,
enemies closer.
mhm.
JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you react to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Well, I don't think that's true. Uh, I think I think the tendency is the opposite, at least in it's denial.
Yeah.
It's people. It's good to want to negotiate, to try and find a middle way, to look on the. But sometimes there are people you can't negotiate with, and you should know that. I mean,
And so,
again, these are rare. I've done maybe three evil people I've known in my life
yeah.
personally.
So, Nassim Taleb said games were created to give non heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is and who
Hmm.
is not.
Yeah.
Then my friend said, well, villains don't think they're bad. They want control. Heroes want freedom. Gregory Bateson said, when the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or
Hmm.
does he go, oh, I did something morally and socially wrong? So it's a lot of prompts, but the basic question is, does punishment work?
Uh, yes, for a rational actor. I mean, that's. Uh, Sure, once burnt, twice shy. You learn, you if something bad happens to you, it's like, I took uh, I took basically Skinner box psychology in college, and you find out that if you negatively reinforce a white rat, it stops doing it. And yeah, I think that's now. Of course, there's all kinds of other, what kind of punishment, and obviously there are people who like it, and I don't know, but sure, carrot and stick.
In carrot stick, right. And
Yeah, yeah.
and what would you suggest as an alternative? Is rehabilitation literally possible?
Of course.
Yeah,
Sure it is. I mean, sometimes it doesn't work, but sure,
yeah,
it's always something to work for.
yeah,
I mean, the worst thing is to, take someone who's done something bad and put them in a community for 10 years where they're full of bad guys teaching them how to be badder. I mean, which is what what we've often got right now.
yeah. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He
Mhm.
basically checked out. He said, "This is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?" Years later, Faulkner said, "Sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism." Why do we
Sure.
have, why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Oh, there's a review by T.S. Eliot of a mystery book, which he gave it a bad review, and he said the people in this book talk on the same level of wit and so forth that we do, and that's not good enough.
Right. John, walk us through your history, your in your tipping points. So you're growing up, your dad's a professor, you're you got books around. Where did you go? I want to be an author. I what did you study in high school and college? And where was that tipping point? You go, that's what I want to do. I want to write nonfiction. And then the tipping point for being an educator.
Oh, I used to like to write stories when I was a kid. Um, when I was in third grade, I I did a story which I think was mainly plagiarized from stuff I'd heard elsewhere. But anyway, I read it before a grade school assembly, and everybody loved it. I got applauded and so forth and so on, and actually became a really popular kid for a while. And that was that. That was, yeah, that's what I want to do. I don't do stories anymore, but
And
that's
then what did you study in college? Was it creative writing or literature or
well, I did uh, 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 I did independent study, which was a really awful attempt at a novel. But no, I studied. It was in college that I discovered James Joyce, basically. And I was an English major, so I took the basic historically oriented you know courses in English literature.
Okay, before we get into Joyce, and thank you, John, what was the tipping point to become an educator?
The draft. uh, I when I grad, I, coming out of college, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I thought actually, if it had been me, I would have taken my typewriter and moved to some kind of dungeon in New York City and tried to make a living as a freelance writer. But in order to stay out of Vietnam, I applied to graduate school and got in, and got very interested in it, and wound up writing my dissertation on Joyce. And by the end of it, I decided that's what I wanted to do. But it wasn't set from the beginning.
A screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process when you're writing one of your books?
You mean as trying to understand Joyce's intention?
Well, it's two parts. It's basically well, that's a good question, what you said. It's what's your intention? You've written many books, or how many books have you written about?
6, and I'm happy to say that it looks like I'm going to get number 7 and 8 out.
Great. So you in those 6 books, I mean, just overall, your intention in writing them, what role did intention play in your creative process? It's
I
more
can tell you that. I mean, there are basically, I think, two schools of literary criticism, or not two schools, but two approaches. And one is that it's a conversation in which people sort of work out their ideas and about this subject or that subject, and the other is a show and tell.
yeah,
And although there's certainly overlap between the two, I'm a show and teller guy. I want
yeah.
to show you something you haven't seen before. I want to tell you something you didn't know before. That's it.
Who did you get that from? Was it some of these critics you're reading
Yeah,
that
yeah. The one side admire Hugh Kenner was an example.
yeah,
He said things. First of all, he was an original thinker. He said things
yeah,
that are arguable.
yeah.
I mean, he said things that I think are wrong, but he made the case for them, and he took chances. And I think there's a lot of critics around today that are playing too safe.
Beautiful. And Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your reader when you're writing those books?
Unconsciously, always, you always have to ask yourself, how much does the reader know? How much do they know about Joyce? Should I footnote this or not? Should I explain this or not? Always.
Now, the 2 questions for your opinion on studying Joyce, how he would answer that, or not how he would answer that, your take. What role did intention play in his creative process?
Well, I don't know. I'm sort of skeptical about trying to, psychoanalyze someone I've never met. But um, I mean, what I've read from Elvin's biography and other sources, ego had a lot to do with it. He. I have a psychiatrist friend, and I described Joyce to her, and I said, he thought he was a genius, and he was a genius. And do those two go together? And she said, "Oh God, no." You have no idea how many people around who think they're geniuses and are not, and that's the problem. But Joyce thought he was special, and he was. So
Yeah.
it was,
And then, what's your take on what Joyce would say? Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much did he think, uh, consider his reader?
a lot. It's kind of perverse because he notoriously made it so difficult for the reader. But he got really upset about the negative feedback on Finnegan's Wake.
Yeah.
And you know, uh, but he kept writing it the way he wrote it. So it was kind of a conflict. He wanted to make his reader be able to read him, and some went along and some didn't.
McLuhan said, that everything we invent extends some humanness, like a knife and fork extends our teeth, shutter in a camera, projector extends our eyelid, and
Sure,
maybe
sure,
maybe even non-tangible like religion or philosophy might be an extension of consciousness. What does
sure.
the writing utensil extend for you? Whether it's a keyboard or a pen, what humanness does it extend?
Uh, well, I mean, I mean, it reproduces my words, which more or less register my thoughts. So I
Yeah.
mean, and it's no question that writing on a computer is different from writing on a typewriter, and writing on a typewriter is different from writing in handwriting. Um, and I do believe those things probably influence your thought. Just the idea of being able to thinking that I can just, you know, drop this for a second and get on the internet and find the answer to this question. Whereas 50 years ago, I would have had to run off to a library and sit down on the floor and flip through books and so forth. That just makes a huge difference in one's approach to how, what you're projecting.
Most of your books were written with pen or with typewriter?
Typewriter,
Keyboard. Keyboard,
typewriter.
yeah.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, I did wanna tell you, John, this book has had a big impact on a lot of us. Finnegan's Wake, a plot summary,
Okay.
and, Michael Silverblatt of Bookworm says, I asked him, what do you think of Finnegan's Wake? He says, there's a typo in every word on purpose. And I think what aphorisms exist is to reword them. And I made up a new one. Uh, there's an epiphany in almost every word of your book on purpose. That's the big question is, it's really intense because I've run a Finnegan's Wake reading club for 28 years in Venice, California. And one of my friends started one in Austin, Texas 12, 15 years ago. And he really uses this book a lot. And
Okay.
it's really enlightening. And did you feel you were reaching out for that word epiphany? You talked about this, the show and tell.
Yeah, that's
Haven't
intended to be a show and tell book. That's
Yeah.
definitely what it's about. Epiphany has a kind of, has a kind of mystical, magical connotations. And the subtitle of my last book on Joyce was "The Empirical Strikes Back." So I like to think of myself in terms of, just the facts, ma'am. Here's stuff you can look up. Yeah, it's documentable. It's evidence, which I think I can make to a certain degree of probability, and um, so I don't know if that counts as an epiphany, but it's definitely a showing and telling.
How do you define what Joyce meant, epiphanies and everydayness? What is, you touched on what you think, you defined epiphanies being more mystical a term, but maybe go a little deeper. What was Joyce really talking about saying epiphanies and everydayness?
Well, one thing he's talking about is it's sort of the opposite of what sometimes people compare Joyce's epiphanies to what Wordsworth called spots of time, and I think they're actually opposite. Wordsworth defines his moments of vision as fallings from us, vanishings, where the normal circumstances of our life just suddenly evaporate, and you can see, look at an apple and you say, "My God, that's this red globular project of chlorophyll and so forth and so on." You see it for the first time, as if you were some kind of a Martian or something. I don't think that's. I think Joyce is more cumulative. It's a matter of getting things to focus, uh, and they fall into focus for whatever reasons, and then you see them as a composite. I think, as I said, I think Joyce was a gestaltist. It's Finnegan's Wake is a constant process of recognizing patterns where you didn't see them before.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's that's sort of what his theory of epiphany back in portrait was, or not in portrait. Well, it is in portrait. But he names it in Stephen Hero and describes it in Portrait of the Artist, and that's that wholeness, harmony, and radiance. That's gestalt.
Beautiful. And I missed the word. Did you say spots in time?
Uh,
SPOTS?
he called them spots of time.
Spots of time.
Yeah, there are in the prelude. He says there are in our existence spots of time.
Yeah.
But spots is, they're absences, whereas Joyce is more of a coordinated combination of presences.
And since you brought up portrait, I'm curious. When Joyce says, I will try to express myself in some mode of life or art as freely as I can and as wholly as I can, using for my defense the only arms I allow myself to use:
Mm-hmm.
silence, exile, and cunning. So, this idea of using arms, extending some humanness, he's saying it right there. This is why McLuhan was so influenced by Joyce. The arms I allow myself to use. And then it's metaphorically, right? Silence, exile, and cunning. What is he saying in those three words, in your opinion?
Well, I think that's a prescription for the life of an artist rather than the work of an artist. You have to disengage yourself. He's in exile. So that's the first thing. So, I mean, you disengage yourself from people who are trying to tell you what you should do and what you should say. You try to think for yourself. You remove yourself further. I mean, in the drastic case of exile, and then then you got to be smart. You got to be smart to survive, and that was quite a Joyce was this penniless refugee from a bankrupt family in an impoverished country, um, making his way in various locales in Europe, and that required for a good deal of just of smarts.
So you're saying the cunning is smart, the exile, but the third was silence. So how do you suss out what is he saying with the word silence?
Uh, Keeping your own counsel, not uh, it's not quite the same thing as antisocial, because Joyce was a great listener and he was quite convivial a lot of the time, but it means uh, thinking these things for yourself. Don't be a conformist. Don't go along. You know.
Yeah, I gave a Joyce talk for John Bishop once at Extreme Joyce, and I said, "You nonconformists are all alike."
That's right. A herd of independent minds, someone once said, right?
Yeah, that's good. But Harold Bloom says exile or what is that influence? Anxiety of influence.
Anxiety of influence.
You absorb your influence and then you abandon them. Like, good luck. Did Joyce do that? We know it's Bruno Vico, blah blah blah. I
Yeah.
mean, how did Joyce absorb and abandon? And did he truly do that, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean he did. It was, I mean, Bloom is right in the sense that there's always a kind of I think kind of resistance built in. You want to learn from someone, but you don't want to be that someone. I think that Joyce had something like that going on with Freud, for instance. Um, Joyce was doing dream analysis before anyone had heard of Freud, and then Freud came along and everybody said, "Oh, you're just like that." Well, he said, "No, I can handle that all by myself." I think so. So yeah, he was he wasn't so much influenced by Freud as was part of the same current of thought that Freud was, and he knew that, and he didn't want to know it like that. I think that kind of thing happens all the time.
Well, that's he was in that zeitgeist of the 20s
Sure.
Paris.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Yeah, because same with Duchamp. I think Duchamp and in McLuhan, and also Einstein, who you just brought up, quantum theory
Mhm.
and relativity is all in the wake, right? I mean, pre
It's in there. Yeah, it's
yeah,
in there. I'm not sure how much Joyce understood about, you knew the cliches, relativity, and so forth. But and he in Finnegan's Wake, Shem is the Weinstein guy, and that's not necessarily definitive.
yeah. But I do love Zappa said that, and he lists Joyce as an influence in his first album. He said that genius is someone who steals from someone and you can't tell who they stole it from. But
I
indeed, we can really trace Dante and Vico, etc. We can trace that, you know.
Well, I mean, Finnegan's Wake calls itself the last word in stolen telling. I mean, the old line, I think it was T.S. Eliot that said, bad writers borrow, good
Yeah,
writers steal.
yeah, yeah. That's a great one. And so when you brought up the word fact, just the facts, ma'am, I love that. This is Shelby Foote. A fact is not a truth until you love it.
A fact is not a truth until you prove it.
Prove it. Oh my God, that's good.
Yeah, you can hate it. I mean, there's such a thing as bad news, but it's a fact.
Yeah. And I like this line that Louis Buñuel says, and I'd like to explore your thoughts on it. I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it.
Well, uh, uh, that depends. That depends. That's certainly well-known cases of people who are entirely too confident in what they believe. But someone tells me that I can get a better deal at this place than at the other place, and it turns out to be right, then I'm not going to resent that.
John, most people love that quote. They go, I believe that. And one guy, I'm glad you sort of challenged it, because one
Mhm.
guy challenged it a while back, and he says, that's bullshit, because if I'm going to seek something, it's because I want to find it. So
Well,
I'm
yeah,
more,
yeah. Some people are too sure of themselves, but some people are competent, know what they're talking about, and should be, attended to.
but I morphed it into the question, if the journey's more important than the destination, why do we have to name or seek a destination if the journey's more important?
Because we are creatures of desire.
Yeah, that's what I said. Um, this zeitgeist in Paris in the 20s was flaneurs,
Mhm.
psychogeography. Just wander aimlessly and you'll hit a epiphany in everydayness.
Surrealists said you should sleep with your doors open. Uh, so that I mean, they must have been living in a safe neighborhood. Sure, but I mean, you should be open to, of course, and what the aleatory it's sometimes called. You just want to, instead of taking a tourist guide to Paris, you should be parachuted into the middle of it and see what you find. That
Yeah,
act- that actually happened to me one. And the first time in Paris, I uh, wound up one end of Paris at the and instead of where my place was, and either I didn't have enough money or the metro was closed or whatever, so I walked across it, and I turned around and I saw this magnificent building. I said, "Wow, that's a great building." And later it turned out to be the Paris Opera. But
yeah,
I didn't know that. Everything I
right,
saw was new.
right. You see with new eyes. That's good.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's stay on this thing about, you said honest there a while back. A Proust question: on what occasion do you lie?
Oh, hmm. Well, the usual. I mean, uh, if someone's, if in matters of taste, if someone likes something I don't, I'm not going to tell them that they're probably not going to tell them what fools they are for, for liking that. See, this is the kind of, you know, just that there are times when lying is the right thing to do, is the moral thing to do.
Yeah.
If the crazed axe killer comes to your door and asks you where your family is, then you should lie to him.
Well, I'm glad you brought up that word taste. I want to go into honesty and lying, but I ask people when they're musicians, my friend says the three T's of music are technique, theory, and taste. So you learn how to do something, you play an instrument, you know the structure. How does one acquire taste? Like, how did you acquire the taste to gravitate towards Dickens and Joyce? How does one acquire taste?
Well, to some extent, it can be acquired. I mean, it can be something you decide to do. These people like something and I don't. Maybe they get something I'm not. Maybe I should give it a second try and so forth. But before that, you got. I mean, there's some things you're just not going to connect with. I forget who it was. Some Italian intellectual, cultural figure, and on his deathbed, the last words he ever spoke were, "Frankly, I always detested Dante." So I mean, it was in a culture which said Dante was God, and, but he gave the best shot and couldn't do it.
That's it. It wasn't
Mm.
Umberto Eco, was it?
No, 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 no. It was someone
But it
before
was
that.
in Italian. Yeah. Okay. So a couple more on this line. This is Eartha Kitt. Truth is
Mm.
a theory that is constantly being disproved. Only lies, it seems, go on forever.
Well, I think I think Earth revolves around the sun, so I think that's been pretty much a constant. But yeah, I mean, on very unfortunately, there are a whole lot of really dumb and obviously wrong stuff that people just want to believe,
Yeah.
and that's certainly a feature of the age in which we live.
Yeah. And here's Schopenhauer. All truth passed through three stages. First, it's ridiculed. Second, it's violently opposed. Third, it's accepted as being self evident.
Sometimes that's true, and sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
That's what's her name, Elizabeth Holmes said. And that was her big. I'm a rebel, and everybody's denying. Everybody's saying I can't do it, but that just goes to show. Again, it's what they said the same to Thomas Edison. Yeah, they said it to a lot of nutcases too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then Robert Evans, the film producer, there are three sides to every story: my side, your side, and the truth, and no one is lying.
I don't think so. I think people lie.
Okay, and the last one is well, this is Don Marquis. How do you say his name?
Oh,
Marquis.
is that Crazy Cat?
Yeah,
Crazy
Don
Cat? Yeah,
Marquis.
yeah, yeah. He's great.
If you make people think they're thinking, they'll love you. If
Hmm.
you really make them think, they'll hate you.
Well, that reminds me of something Mark Twain said,
Yeah.
which it's a lot easier to fool people than to persuade them that they've been fooled.
Yes. Beautiful. So, John, walk us through your history with Joyce. Did you start on your own or were there assignments in class? So, in high school, they're telling you to read this or college, and where'd you start? And then is the wake the pinnacle for you, or is it, what's your, what
Yeah,
do
the way for that last question, the Wake is the pinnacle. I think Joyce
you,
got better. I mean, you're
yeah,
40 years old. You just come out with Ulysses. What do you do? Well, he topped himself, amazingly
yeah,
enough. But the first thing I think I read was Portrait of the Artist and a Young Man when I was in high school, sort of just because it was there, and didn't get a lot of it. But one thing that really impressed me right from the get-go, I've said this before, was that the boys in that book call one another by their last names, which was true. That was true to life, and almost no other book I've ever read about kids was that true. They were always calling one another cutesy first names, and so I think Joyce actually got that right. He remembered something and put it on the page, and that's still how I think about him.
and then the rest was assignments in class, or it's always you're picking it up on your own
Well,
and not,
I picked the courses. I had a favorite teacher in college, Austin Briggs, who's doing fine right now. He's living in Mexico. He still writes on Joyce, and he was a very uh, you know um, enjoyable teacher and very good on Joyce. And I did a I think a senior thesis on Ulysses, and went on, and that's what I did my doctorate dissertation on too, grad school.
what's the Joyce gestalt for you in regards to Finnegan's Wake? Beckett says it's language, or it's language about language.
Hmm.
And
No, it's not language about language. It's based on reality, the
yeah,
empirical. Yeah.
is the Wake true?
Uh, going to be Pontius Pilate here and say what is truth. I mean, uh, uh, well, yeah.
Yeah,
It's got a bunch of made up characters, but okay. So, uh, but I think it has an internal consistency. I think it's based. I think it contains a lot of things that ring bells. The almost the last thing it ever says, right at the very end, is first we feel, then we fall. I
yeah,
think that's true. Uh, just as a general statement of the human condition, and it's J.S. Atherton, another Joyce and I much admire. J.S. Atherton said it's based on an old heresy, which is that God was the not only the creator, first creator, but is the first sinner. It wasn't that everything was perfect and then Satan and so forth came along. It's that the nature of things is such that there's always going to be, it's always going to have problems, or as I think Leonard Cohen said it, there's a crack in everything. That's how the
yeah,
light gets through.
yeah. Beautiful. So Atherton really nailed it. He says God was the first creator
And the first sinner.
And
I think he really nailed it. That's the
that,
essential premise of Finnegan's Wake.
that is amazing. I totally agree. Zappa wrote a song called "The World's Greatest Sinner,"
Mm.
and can you separate the sin from the sinner is an ongoing question. But one gentleman, Sam Sloat, he wrote that book, How Joyce Wrote Finnegan's Wake.
Oh yeah, yeah,
When I interviewed him, he said the exact same line. He said, "The first we feel, then we fall." That was,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, it's true.
yeah,
Just sorry. I mean, it sounds very, kind of freshman essay thing, but it's true. That's a true statement.
it is.
Yeah.
That's why I said I insist
Mm.
that Finnegan's Wake is true. But how much? This is a stupid question, John, but I ask all these Joyceans. How much do you get the wake, and how much did Joyce get the wake from 0 to 100%? Just your hunch or guess.
Well, I think Joyce got it 100%. I mean, I think he knew every. I think he put it together, not word by word, but letter by letter.
Yeah,
I mean, the problem is, of course, that there's all kinds of problems with the text, and it's so there are mistakes. But I think I, I, I think he was in complete control, and I mean, I mean, keeping in mind that a lot of it was kind of subconscious. That he said about, I'm digging a tunnel from both ends of the
yeah,
mountains, and they're gonna. So okay, so he had a lot of faith in um, that his buried as well as conscious resources would help him out, but that had worked before in Ulysses, and I think it did here too.
yeah. Very good. And just your own analysis of yourself getting the wake. What percentage?
Out of what? Out of 100?
Yeah,
Well, every time I read it, I get it more. So I don't know what the upper limit is. Open a page of Finnegan's Wake, and I think I can understand most of it. 70%, 80%, something like that.
70 to 80. Good. I like that.
Uh,
And so, I heard this thing by McLuhan. He said, you can't write the great American novel because the front page of the newspaper is the great American novel.
mm,
And one of my teachers taught me a line that I like to repeat, that the wake is satirizing the sensory overload we live in. And
mm.
that indeed what Joyce did was he invented the internet and disguised it as a book, or he invented whatever's going to be after the internet and disguised it as a book. So Chat GPT, well, Joyce already invented that you have to read it out loud with a group of people. I would love to get your honest opinion on that thought, because this is the idea of reading the wake out loud with a group of people.
Always a good idea, sure.
Yeah.
But you have to, people always say you should read it out loud, and you should, but you should also have the page before you. I mean, it's
Oh,
both.
yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah, okay.
insistence. You have to have the page in front of you. It's not like these Ulysses Bloomsday events where people just listen to it being read, or what you talked about earlier,
Mhm.
books on tape. You have to have the text in front of you, hearing other people read aloud. But this
Oh,
idea,
let me mention, by the way, the Audible audio books. They have a version of books of someone reading Finnegan's Wake, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name right
yeah.
now. It's very, very, very good.
Oh yeah, I've heard that. But
Yeah,
again,
yeah,
if they're playing it to you, you better have it in front of you,
okay.
in my opinion.
Sure, sure.
But this idea of being predictive, some Joyceans don't like that. Oh, the word email is in there, and 9/11 can be explained on the first page, blah blah blah.
No, no, no,
It,
no, 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 no. I mean, you get that feeling. I mean, uh, the person who I think sort of first floated this idea was my old friend, much missed Adeline Glasheen, another Joyce sort of role model for me. Uh, and she sort of halfway suggested that there was a reference to um, what was his name? The oh God, William Joyce. William Joyce, who was Lord Ha Ha during World War II,
yeah,
and no, no, she sort of conceded, that couldn't have happened because Joyce died before World War II, and nobody had heard of William Joyce, Lord
yeah,
Ha Ha, and so forth, and that it's sort of fun to play with that, but no,
yeah. It's like Martha Graham said. great artists aren't ahead of their times, they are their times.
Mm, more like it. So, I mean, Joyce does incorporate a lot of the latest stuff. The pub in Phoenix Wake not only has a radio, but it has the latest model of radio. And there's this Joyce genetic studies online, which has people researched that, and they found the advertisements for radios in the mid and late 30s, and it also at one point turns into television, and of course there's a nuclear explosion and so forth. But all that was um, possible, imaginable in Joyce's
Yeah.
time. People had heard of television. I mean, almost nobody had it, but it was around, and you could tell that it was going to be something that became big in the future.
Yeah. So we're doing a project on archiving, and etymologically, the word archive comes from records or documents preserved as evidence, and it even goes into the Greek town hall, public building, to be the first Archon, the first ruler. Even before that, 1400s, its archives keep safe, free from harm. Is archiving more innate or more invented by humans?
Oh, I think we're pack animals. I think we we are the curious animal. And the more we know, the happier we are, and the more we know, the more we want to know, and so we accumulate and store it and archive it.
And then, the Egyptians would put stuff in their coffin with them. But if you go with the Ram Dass, be here now, live in the moment. And
Hmm.
I do like Wyndham Lewis saying, artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future.
Hmm.
What what do you think is going to happen with your archives? You must have this archive of all the writings that in the prep you did on your books. Is it stored in a proper
Oh,
box?
well, yeah. I'm not. The original Phineas Wake a plot summary was twice as long as it turned out to be, because it was just too long. I mean, it's still 400 pages long for an academic book.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I sometimes think I'll go back to that. But I'll tell you what I would like to be around after I'm not, uh, is my blog, John Gordon's Finnegan's Wake blog.
Yeah.
That's my magnum opus, and that you know I'm not talking about a box full of papers. I'm talking about something that can be is on the internet, and I want to stay on the internet
Right.
for as
But
long as possible.
let's analyze that for a second, John. To go back, your papers, are they destined to be stored, or that someone, family or friend, is supposed to do something with them when you die?
Gosh, I haven't thought about that.
But
Last
they're
will and testament.
but they're in boxes in your house,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, sure,
Yeah.
sure. I mean, yeah, and well, actually, most of the stuff lately is just on my hard drive, and
Yeah.
different, different computer files.
Yeah, and then talking to major archivists, one needs to check your hard drive every year, and every 7 years migrate it to another hard drive. Is that something you
Oh,
do?
I back up like crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
when I was Finnegan's Wake book, it was the first book I wrote on the computer, and I the this was beginning days, and I managed to wipe out a floppy disk, wipe out an entire chapter, and that was one of the worst things. And just having to start all over again, and don't want that to happen again. So I'm
Right.
sort of paranoid about that.
In your blog, Living On and Digital, again, speaking to the expert archivists across the world, we've learned paper lasts a lot longer. If the internet shuts down, uh, then what happens to your blog? There's no backup. If it's your hard drives go obsolete, and the internet shuts down.
Well, yeah, and the sun goes out and so forth. I mean, it's mutatis mutandis, but I mean, if the internet goes, if the internet goes out, then the loss of my blog is the least of our worries.
Yeah. How do you want to be remembered?
I, again, my magnum opus is
Yeah.
my blog, and I hope people, books will be in libraries, and probably eventually they'll be available on the. I guess like some of them are on the internet during the as copyright and so forth goes out. So, but the main thing is the blog. That's what I'm been. It all started. Um, oh, I know. It started when I was reading a Victorian novel and I found the word railway brain. And I looked it up and found out what it meant. And I remembered it's in Finnegan's Wake. And and that was when Roland McHugh's annotations had first come out. And I checked it in the annotations, it wasn't there. So I sent Roland a email saying, here's something you might think of putting in the next edition, which he did. And that sort of got me, you know, oriented and activated. I wound up, I sent him in a bunch of stuff, and then I said, well, maybe I should just do this on my own. So the blog is billed as being as a supplement to McHugh. Um, and that's, I think, different from all the other similar things out there, that they all include McHugh, sometimes add additional stuff. But everything I do is, I say this, I begin with something McHugh said, and here's something else you should know about it. But it's never the idea is to just replicate what he did.
Very good. Yeah, I was always curious. I can't Fleet doesn't seem to have everything that McHugh has, but it seems as though they would have had everything
Yeah,
from
I can't, bequeath. I mean, Fleet is well, I'm aware of that. I've used it, but I sometimes check it because I don't want to duplicate them.
Yeah,
But again, they certainly include a lot of McHugh.
yeah,
Uh, and they've got sort of the same limitation that McHugh has in that they're really all one-liners.
yeah.
They don't give them so them. There are things that require 100 words of explanation or whatever, and neither McHugh nor Fleet goes in for that.
Yeah, we've had a slew of great people in our group over 28 years, and there was this elderly British guy, and he would come in and he would do McHugh, Roland McHugh without McHugh. He was just natural. He knew
Good.
everything that Roland McHugh was. It was like amazing. But just to clarify, you said the word was railway brain.
Railway brain. Yeah, just one word, railway brain.
Yeah,
It's something that happened a lot in the 19th century. It's some kind of, damage to your brain or thinking process as a result of a railroad accident.
yeah,
Happened to Dickens. Happened a lot. I mean, those trains were not all that reliable.
yeah. What was the motive of the cave artist? Your hunch or guess?
Ooh. I've always kind of liked the idea that the cave artist was a woman.
Yeah,
Uh, uh, because have you seen those? It's the handprints are small. That's their
yeah.
signature. I know people were smaller then, but uh, uh, what was the motive? Paint, reproduce. Well, the handprint suggests that they wanted to be remembered in some way. This is my imprint. And I like that idea. I like the idea that you can go in a cave and see somebody sort of communicating with you from 30,000 years ago. And I think maybe that's what they'd like that idea too. But also they're beautiful. I
Yeah.
mean, T.S. Eliot went into one of those caves that I forget where, came out with a three-word conclusion: art doesn't improve. I mean, it changes, but just I visited one at Peshmerl years ago, and that was a memorable experience.
You mean T.S. Eliot saw cave art and he says, "Art doesn't improve."
Yeah, well, he went into one. Yeah, I don't know which
Beautiful.
one, but the art doesn't improve.
Yeah. I asked Michael Apted, the filmmaker, years ago, why do rock video editors
Michael
feel
Apted, the Seven Up guy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, what a great guy. Yeah,
Oh, amazing filmmaker. But I asked him 40 years ago, I says, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? He had made a documentary on a Russian rock star. And he said, because we've learned to take in information faster. But just to set it up, you know, in the 80s, when I asked him this, MTV was flourishing with rapid editing. Marty
Right.
Scorsese said, I cut my films faster because of MTV. Most people don't know rapid montage was invented in 1922 by Abel Gance.
Right.
But saying this sort of made me come up with this question, which I asked with a bias. Can we literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
Oh, I think the coordinates change. Define information. The guy who believed that, the first one I'm aware of was Richard Lester, who did A Hard Day's Night. He had
Yeah,
this idea that that we'd been schooled to do exactly that. But he wound up to be a sort of good, but kind of run of the mill. I mean, he changed back to kind of conventional storytelling
yeah.
in film. And the most popular movie in the world right now is Taylor Swift concert, and from what I've seen of it, there's nothing particularly rapid fire about that. There's a lot
Yeah.
of banging and explosions and and special effects, but it's the concert. It's a concert of the sort that could have been given 50 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, but the hidden question, really, John, is can humans literally multitask?
I'm no good at it. I need well, some people can. I mean, otherwise there'd be no such thing as cubicles. Cubicles would drive me crazy. Um, I'm very much a one thing at a time guy, but Napoleon was very good at it. So, okay, for instance, that's one of the many things I do not have in common with Napoleon.
Mud is the fifth element. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Well, depends, but well, it depends. That's no absolute answer to that.
That's fine. You've accomplished a lot, John. Rate these three elements: luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role, second and third?
Well, luck is like being able to breathe. I mean, I've had again, I've had very, as I said before, I'm a white American who grew up in the second half of the 20th century. That is 1/1000% lucky.
Yeah.
And so without that, um, uh, and I guess skill and ambition, they interact. As my psychiatrist friend said, there are a lot of people who think they're geniuses and aren't.
Yeah.
So, and so I can't really prioritize that. Luck is the ground floor.
No worries. T.S. Eliot said poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
Sort of English professor English.
Professor English?
English professor English. I mean, yeah. My father was a professor, and that's sort of a lot of sort of academic types in my
Yeah.
background. So
Well, I've really found you to be educating me today on a real grounded level. It isn't highbrow academia, but I appreciate your time. Two of my film heroes say, ignore yourself. Jonas Mika says, there's no self expression. The great jazz pianist Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making more self expression or more your vehicle for whatever technologies, cultures, and environments are dominant?
yeah, the word is medium, which again is a McLuhan word. I mean, when you're on a roll, when you're in the zone, I mean, there is such a thing as flow,
Yeah,
and that's like the muse.
yeah.
It's and then the eyes, the ideas don't come to you from nowhere. They come to you because they're there. But there's a certain kind of condition of receptivity that sometimes is there and sometimes isn't.
Can art making be egoless?
No, no. Again,
Is
those handprints on the cave walls.
yeah. Is perception reality? Good laugh. I
uh,
like that.
uh, you know, uh, my main center of focus in Joyce is how sensation turns into perception. So it's the process.
Yeah.
But obviously, people can hallucinate, non-existent stuff.
McLuhan probed Finnegan's Wake. calling Artist Dream Awake. You know, we all have these incredible scenarios
Mhm.
while we're sleeping, but artists can also do it while they're awake. Have dreams played a role in your creative process in writing?
No, I once dreamed I won the lottery. I went out and bought a lottery ticket and I didn't win it. So it's the hell with dreams is sort of my attitude towards that. I don't, I my dreams are very boring and they're very predictable. I mean, or they're put together of bits of things that for perfectly random, nonsensical reasons I thought of the day before. And they come together in kind of, Rube Goldbergish collections. I don't believe dreams are prophetic. Um, I'm not a Freudian. I don't think that writing down your dreams and telling what they, well, talking about what you wrote about and think you remembered to some intelligent analyst, that could work because you have a conversation about yourself, what you think
Yeah.
is important, and so forth. But I don't think the dreams themselves are a big help.
You got me on the Rube Goldberg. Thank you for bringing him up, a hero.
Okay.
Lewis Carroll said, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Lately, well, I mean, I wouldn't know if I had. I'm sure I have. I mean, um, again, I'm still hung up. I'm still clueless. I try to think. I try to approach the world and my work in terms of probabilities.
Yeah,
50% likely, 70% likely. Um, I certainly know some. Yeah. Anyway,
that's good. Tell me one major element in your book writing for many years that stayed the same and one major element that's changed.
um, I guess I'm. I guess I'd like to think I'm less um, cocky. Because I've been wrong for one thing, and that's always sobering. And one thing that stayed the same is I'm still trying to show and tell.
Yep. Moshe Feldenkrais says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
A weakness I turned to a strength. Uh, when I was 12 years old or something, I moved from Oregon to California, and they were two different cultures, and I felt completely sort of out of it. And one of the things, I mean, I didn't know who Dick Clark was, for instance, which was amazing. Okay, because there hadn't been a Dick Clark show in
Yeah,
Oregon where I came in. Okay, um, and I sat down. This too. I made myself listen to rock and roll, which I hated. I thought that's ridiculous. I mean, my family was a classical music family, uh, and I did it. By God, I actually wound up. One of the day when I was getting through graduate school um, by writing for money. I I was part of a board of a rock magazine. I did pieces on Bob Dylan and things like that. And that's something. So that's something I actually overcame. You know,
that's good.
detestation of rock and roll.
What was the rock magazine you wrote for?
It's called Fusion. It was
Fusion.
Fusion. It hadn't been around for a long time. It was kind of a would-be rival to Rolling Stone.
Did you ever write on Zappa?
No, no. No.
So onward and upward. We got a few more minutes, and I really
Okay.
appreciate your time, John. This has been truly enlightening. I asked my friend who wrote comedy with Robin Williams, can satire be destructive? He says that's the job of satire. Swift compares satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own.
Hmm.
What's the function of satire?
Well, to tell truths that people don't want to hear.
Yeah. And what's your take on that? Can satire be destructive?
Oh, well, I think it's meant to be destructive. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's meant to. And Swift is certainly an example of that. Yeah.
What's the most significant difference between women and men, physical aside?
I think women are nicer.
Yeah. Anger can be a productive emotion when fill in the blank.
When something uh, when something has to be confronted, dealt with.
Yeah. There's a line that goes, "You create what you resist." Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into, "You are what you hate." In fact, James Joyce
Mm,
said, "It's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve."
sure.
And Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, "Thank God I'm an atheist." So
Right.
I'm not saying you, but this line, "You create what you resist," or "one creates what one resists." Any
Hmm.
thoughts on that line?
Well, I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
That a version of that in Ulysses applies. Stephen applies it in a negative way to Mulligan. It's a German word expression that translates as "what you mock, you also serve." If it's the religions teach this. If you concentrate on something you hate, then it that determines who you are.
That's if what you resist persists.
Yep, yep,
Very
exactly.
good, John. How do you find peace of mind?
Well, I think Auden was right. Concentration. Do
Wow.
something you really like, really interested in, which does not. Someone once said about the 18th. Someone said about who spent his life. This 18th century scholar said, "I spent my life among the times that do not disappoint."
Yeah.
So you don't want you find something which like Finnegan's Wake, which does not quit.
Does not quit. I agree 100%. I quote Auden, but I sort of reword it. It says the mystery of art is that we don't know if it activates or pacifies us. And I sort of like that idea because people go to art for various reasons. Bertolt Brecht said, "I don't want art that puts me in a trance. I want art that activates me." But there
You know,
but there is art,
Bertolt Brecht is not my favorite guy.
right, but there is art that does put you in a trance
Yes,
that
that's what
could
I want.
eventually lead to activating you.
Okay, I mean, but I like to travel. I go to movies to be hypnotized,
Yeah.
and music the same way, and literature. I mean, it's you get in the groove,
Yeah.
you get into the zone, whatever. That's what I want.
Yeah, there's an artist, Mike Kelly said, "Art is making your problems other people's problems."
Well, that's certainly gonna happen. Empathy, we'll call it.
Empathy. And then Fanny Howe, the poet, said, "The point of art is to show people that life is worth living by showing that it isn't."
Oh, I don't fall. I'm sorry. She loses me.
I know.
Okay.
I'm always asking because I don't know it. So you brought this up, 12-year-old. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Watch out for that Debbie Hooper. She'll break your heart.
Oh, here's
And
five.
because she did. Right.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No,
So did you resolve it and learn a lesson from it, or
it broke my heart, but I guess that's part of the package. That's what
yeah?
happens.
Well, these are five Alan Watts questions just off the top of your head in a couple words. One, who started it all?
Okay, going to be academic here. Define it. I
Are
mean,
we going? Yeah.
Big Bang, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Two, are we going to make
Well,
it?
I mean, again, the world, believing in God is crazy, and not believing in God is crazy.
Yes. Three, where do we put it?
Uh, we're getting a bit pornographic here, I think. Where it belongs.
Four, who's cleaning it up?
The people who aren't paid enough.
Is it serious?
It's tragic. Like those two masks of Greek group theater, tragic and comic.
Yeah.
It's
Few more and we're out of here, John. Thank you
mm.
again. If a public no, should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Oh, that's definitely over.
Yeah. If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
I told you so.
They want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
Absinthe.
Now, that's a good one. I never have asked anyone. Well, how do you think Joyce would have answered that? If they wanted to scent the glue in the binding of Finnegan's Wake, what smell would he have said?
The Liffey River.
Oh my God, you scored there. The Liffey River, beautiful. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
Oh, again, my first memory was in Boston Commons, so I think I'd like it there. And it would, would be made of marble. Sure, why not? Something, not just tritely enough, but sure.
Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
I never had it. I never want
Yep, it's good. You never had it, but you never want it.
to go to China.
Very good. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
You say it's a bag. Well, I guess I tried and float on it.
That is brilliant. You float on the bag. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, every penny port in a storm.
That's descent into the maelstrom. You take advantage of
Yeah, what works?
what works. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Oh gosh, not a whole lot. I think that because the main cultural shift right now is post-truth, and I don't like that. I think that well, the internet does make a lot of things possible. It makes it possible to be smarter, and I'm happy that in the realm of literary criticism, we've gotten past the phase that I didn't like, which goes by the name of capital T theory, and we've gotten into much more documentable, uh, evidence-based, uh, based on stuff that you can find from that would have taken a lot more work and time for research than it does now.
Yeah.
There's just a lot more data out there available, and that's good.
Really good, John. And, McLuhan said in 57, it's misleading to suppose there's any difference between education and entertainment.
Well,
The
that's
dis-
great. Yeah,
yeah,
that's old. Yeah.
well,
Philosophy. Yeah,
I'll
go ahead.
finish
Yeah.
I'll finish the quote just really quick. It's like setting up a distinction between didactic and lyric poem on the ground that one teaches and the other one pleases. However, it's always been true whatever pleases teaches more effectively. So
No question.
basically, if you can just discuss pleasing, teaching more effectively, and how being an educator is involved in that.
Well, you try to do. I mean, at the beginning of Canterbury Tales, Chaucer says he's going to tell stories of sentence and solace. That means I'm going to teach you stuff in an amusing way, an entertaining way. And actually, he wasn't original. It goes back. I think it was Horace who said that was he's quoting there or whatever. And of course, yes, you got to get one of the two. That's what I used to tell my writing students. You either tell me something or you entertain me, ideally both, but you got to do one or the other at least.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and what's the function of laughter?
Well, it's a form of sanity.
Yeah. Gurdjieff said laughter is the reconciliation of yes and no.
Hmm.
But McLuhan loved to quote Steve Allen, behind every joke, there's a grievance. What do you
Well,
think of?
that's not always true. The case is one of my favorite writers is P.G. Wodehouse,
Yeah,
and he writes completely non-hostile, wonderful comedy.
yeah.
So he's not a I mean, it's all, there in a lot of comedy does have grievance or anger behind it, which been great. But it doesn't necessarily have to be the case.
Yeah. And Thornton Wilder, who was indeed a Joycean, said, "Art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time."
Sure.
You've laid your cards on the table for 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
The old line, you try to leave the world a better place than you found it. Hope to, and that, aside from not being a liar and a cheat and a thief, that means, I have a nice family, have a nice daughter. I've just become a grandfather. I want to, make things as good as I can for them, and I hope to teach people some stuff, show and tell.
Beautiful. What's a question that remains unresolved for you?
Oh, um, I mean the big ones. I mean the big. Again, I'm a clue slut. I Newton thought if Newton figured out enough to make the quantum mechanics does it for me.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought, okay, basic rule is you can't have the same thing two places different at the same time. Well, apparently that's not the case. All right, I give up. I give up. I just, I, so it's questions like that.
Yeah.
I can tell you what the capital of North Dakota is, but I can't tell you
Yeah.
that. Bismarck.
Beautiful. John, how has studying Joyce, writing about him so well, too, we appreciate all your books. How has studying Joyce shaped your behavior?
Well, it gave me a living for one thing. And I mean, introduced me to Joyceans. I mean, Joyce. I'm very sorry to miss the last couple of conferences because of COVID. Uh, but it's my old teacher and friend Austin Briggs once said about the Joyceans. It's the best club in the world.
Yeah. Beautiful. It's quite amazing. I agree with you in so many ways. What gives you the most optimism?
Hmm. That Donald Trump is in lousy physical shape.
That is that was a great answer. Thank you for that. Well, John, it's been an amazing pleasure because Wilhelm Reich, when he was asked what is the best thing for a human being, he said other people.
Sure.
And they asked Groucho Marx the last question I asked you, what gives you the most optimism at the end of his life? And Groucho said, other people.
Okay.
It sure been fun spending this time with another person. I mean, especially when you said, how it shaped your behavior is that you got introduced to other people. It's
Yeah.
like
Sure. Sure.
it's amazing, like the best club in the world. And I'll end on this McLuhan line that I love so much is communication of the new is a miracle, but it's not impossible. So thank you for all the newness you've bestowed on me through your books and this time together. Thank you so much, John.
Okay. Thank you. My pleasure. Okay. I'll be logging out now. Bye.
Okay.
Bye. Bye.
I'm
Bye.
going to hit the end broadcast button, but I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
I got to go.